Good morning, guys. Today's the day after Kika went to Haiti, so I am all by myself. One of the projects I'm going to get done today is installing a new windlass motor. Ours, it's the same motor that's in there now. This is actually a 48 volt scooter motor that we got off of eBay. They're maybe $100 or so they're pretty expensive. Since our boat runs at 48 volts because of the electric motor, we need a 48 volt windlass motor or a 120 volt windlass motor that be running off of the inverter. So we found it's easiest to just go with a 48, and that way we're only running a few amps, maybe 10 amps or so to the bow, so we can use really small wires, which is pretty nice. Unfortunately, the first one that we bought 3 years ago, we installed, and it was sort of just an experiment, really. Trying to figure out how to mount, because this isn't designed to go into our windlass. It's not a manufactured thing for our windlass. So making some sort of plate, making some sort of mounting system to get it up underneath our windlass was very much a trial and error, and we trialed and errored several times. So progressively it's been getting more and more worn out and more destroyed. But it's been 3 years, so for $100 it's held up pretty well. So I will have to modify this motor a little bit, but at least I know that the mounting holes in the windlass are all centered and the wiring is all right, and it's the right size and the right horsepower and wattage and everything like that. So my task for today is going to be getting our windlass back up and running so that we can sail on and off the anchor without having to haul the chain in by hand. Problem is Kika's not here, so it's going to be a little bit more tricky to hold a wrench on top and a ratchet underneath and try to get the bolts out by myself. I think I'll be able to figure out how to do it. It's just a lot more of like climbing in and out and in and out. Yeah, let's get started. All right, as I crank on the nut from underneath, just gonna leave this wrench up here attached like that. It should spin, lock itself in place, so as I go underneath it'll hold itself there. That's the plan anyway. Hopefully it works. Let's see what we got here. Got this PVC cover on here to protect the motor from any salt water coming down to the sort of hose pipe that we made. So far it's worked really well. It's been on here for 3 years and the motor's not rusty at all, so I call that a win. I'm interested to find out why it stopped working though, why the motor stopped working. Something just shorted out in there, I think, after so much abuse. All right. Gotta bring out the motivator. The only downside to butyl tape is that it gets real sticky sometimes. Looks pretty good actually. Pretty much no rust on there at all. Definitely smells like a burnt up motor though. Look at that. Gross. I don't know if you can see this, but there's metal, like copper fused in there. And that thing got burnt up pretty good. Woo, yeah. Failure of the greatest degree. Oh, like that. So this is the top plate that I'm gonna keep because I got these bolts and I tapped them and they're all like perfectly aligned and everything's good. So I'm gonna be reusing that whole setup. You guys see how chewed up that is? Look at that. Burnt out all these wires too. Yeah, this thing got fried. Fried. The only other modification I'm gonna need is to recut this keyway into the new motor shaft. Something I did on this one, it worked pretty well. All right, well, I can definitely see why this windlass motor failed. But yeah, I'm gonna clean up bottom of the windlass, clean up the deck, modify the new motor just a little bit, and then go ahead and reinstall all that, and hopefully it's gonna work this time. See that line right there? That's the midpoint. It needs to be set in that far, but it's working pretty well. Listen guys, obviously the Dremel isn't the best tool for cutting keyways into a shaft, but it's all I've got. I've done it quite a few times in the boat now, and for stuff like the windlass motor, it works fine. So these cheap little screws that the motor's held together with are what broke the second time that it failed. So the first time we were in Puerto Rico and it got filled with oil, and we cleaned it out and replaced the bushing in the bottom of the windlass, and that seemed to fix it. And the second time it broke was when one of these bolts broke in Rio, and it was kind of just hanging there like half disassembled and somehow was still working. And now the third time it broke is now when this whole thing just like fried and melted and completely got destroyed. So luckily I still have the old motor plate from the front of the other motor, which I installed these stainless steel threaded rod. So it's a much stronger bolt than whatever these are. And I'll be putting this one back on the new motor. Look at the difference. Man, look at that. The other thing I'm gonna have to do is take the positive negative leads and put them out through the bottom of the plate like I did with the old one here, because there's just not enough space to put it down through the hole. When they're coming out the side, they end up like getting caught on the fiberglass. All right, now that the electrical connections are all cleaned up and reattached, I think it's time to put this thing back together. Well, that bolted up pretty easy. I'm just gonna put a little bit more butyl tape around the base of the windlass, slide it back into place, and rewire it from the inside. Looks like just in time too, because it's about to start raining. All right, she's back in. Now I get to go inside, tighten the bolt stem from the inside before that gets here. That looks wet. Well, it looks like I got in just in time. It is raining outside. Luckily, the windlass, at least the butyl tape's on and it's all squished down on deck, so it's not going to start leaking while it's raining. So I'm going to crawl into the V-berth and finish bolting it up and rewiring it, and then give it a test once this rain stops.
That'll about do it. I also installed this little box over here, if you can see it, this one here. This little box is connected to a little switch, and it's wireless. When you want to push that button, it activates the solenoid switch for the windlass. So now you have like a wireless remote for our windlass too, which is pretty sweet. Time to trip the breaker and give this thing a try.
Well, that's a lot better than it was before. Well, I just finished installing the windlass motor and the new remote switch, and everything works perfectly. The new motor is awesome. It's so much quieter and more powerful than the old one was, because the old one has been damaged so many times. But continue to learn from our mistakes. We didn't really know how to install a 48-volt motor in a windlass. It's not something that's really designed to do that, but it took us a few tries, and we finally figured it out. And in doing so, we damaged the motor a few times and learned from our mistakes a few times. So hopefully this motor will last a little bit longer. I'm just gonna finish washing up dishes here and probably call it a night. I am exhausted, and tomorrow is another big day. Good morning, guys. Well, something very interesting happened last night. I was about ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden the windlass turned on and was just, and it got tied up on the snubber, and I quickly tripped the breaker because I was like, what the hell's going on? I thought it was this little remote switch, like something I had installed that wasn't working. But this morning I monkeyed around back inside the V-berth, and I think that the contactor that switches the motor from going forward to reverse, I think it's bad, because I can push the buttons and I can hear it click, but every single post has continuity through it when I check it with the multimeter. So those things are expensive, but it's a really nice piece of gear to have, especially when we're sailing on and off the hook. It just makes life so much easier to not have to haul the anchor up by hand. So this morning I am going on a bit of a dinghy trip back up to North Palm Beach to West Marine. Hopefully they have another contactor, and I'm also going to pick up a few other small things that I'll be installing later today. So let's go on a dinghy trip. So apparently these dudes are building a giant sandcastle Christmas tree. Hope we're still around by the time it's up, because that looks pretty cool. All right, guys, little bit of an update. West Marine did not have a reversing contactor for our style of windlass, one with 4 pins on it. So I ended up ordering one off of Amazon, and it was for like an off-road winch. Pretty beefy setup, looked exactly the same. And within about 10 tests, it also failed in the exact same way that our old one failed. I think that our new lithium-ion batteries pack a lot more punch than the old lead-acid ones do, because what it's doing is inside of the contactor, there's a copper plate that goes up and down. On that copper plate is a little silver pad, and it's welding those together. There's a lot of power running through it when it first clicks on. So it blew out the $30 contactor. It turns out 12-volt contactors really just aren't designed to have 48 volts running through them. So instead, I took one of our old contactors that we used to use for the electric motor, and it's designed for 48 volts, 500 amps, and I wired it in just a single contactor. So the windlass still works, but it only works to bring the anchor in, and then we can use a handle and use the clutch in the windlass to drop the anchor chain with gravity. So it's slightly inconvenient, but it's not that bad. We still don't have to haul it up by hand, which is awesome. Yeah, so this whole windlass rebuild turned into quite a bit larger of a project than I was expecting, and pretty much filled up my whole week. So that's going to be it for this week. I hope you guys didn't mind my editing style. Sorry for the wind noise. All of this video was shot on my iPhone. And Kika's down in Haiti this week filming the Haiti Sailing Cup. So next week we'll be sharing that with you guys. So until then, cheers.